All right, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us, everyone. This is the Alumni Panel 1 portion of our interviewing workshop presentations today. About 15 minutes ago, we just finished a fantastic presentation by Lisa from the CCD, just about more general information, types of medical school, dental school interviews, strategies for responding to those questions. And we are absolutely thrilled now to be joined by some amazing alumni. I actually didn't sleep well last night. I was just so excited to see all of your faces. And our current cycle applicants are really appreciative too of your time and the opportunity to connect directly with you. So the game plan for this morning. This is our first panel, so we're joined by actually 5 alumni. My dental rep, Kiara, unfortunately just had to cancel about an hour ago, but I will drop her email in the chat. She is happy to connect with anyone through email. And the brief agenda is we're going to begin with some staff and panelist introductions. Our office has had a lot of updates in terms of staffing, so I just want to make sure everyone tuning in is aware of who we are at this moment. And then we are going to present some standard questions to our panelists. They receive these questions ahead of time. And after that, really just want to take it away with some audience Q&A. Also, panelists, you didn't know this, but by agreeing to do this panel, you are tacitly agreeing to our pet policy. So if you do have a pet or a small child in the background and they come into the camera frame, please note that you are expected to stop talking and introduce that pet and tell us all about that pet, and we will be very happy. All right. Okay. So I'm going to begin with some staff intros. I believe Lisa is still joining us right now. Lisa, would you like to introduce yourself and just let people know about the CCD a bit?
Sure. Hi, everyone. For those of you who were with us this morning, welcome back. And for those of you who are not, welcome. As Krista mentioned, my name is Lisa Famularo. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a career coach in the Center for Career Development here at UConn. The Center for Career Development does provide a variety of services, but I think the one that's most relevant today is our one-on-one coaching services. So we do offer career coaching appointments where you can come and chat with a career coach about really anything related to your career journey, whether that's interviewing, which I know is our topic for today, or pretty much anything else. We also offer practice interviews. So if you're looking to do like a true immersive experience to practice for your upcoming interview, we can do that with you. And we do also work with alumni. So if you have graduated and you're within 3 years of graduation, we work with you just as if you were a current student, full suite of services. After that, we do have to limit your number of appointments, unfortunately, just because there are so many alumni of UConn and it's just a lot of people for us to manage. But if anybody has any questions about our alumni policy or about our services, I am happy to answer them.
Thank you, Lisa. So now let's introduce some staff from our office. I believe Erin, our Director of Pre-Professional Advising, did have to hop off, but she has been with us since last May. And so I'm going to ask, I think Emma is on the call. Emma, would you like to jump in? I know it's still very early in the morning for you.
Yeah, for those who don't know, I'm in California right now, so it's getting better than 6 a.m. this morning. But hi everyone, my name is Emma. I am one of the advisors here with the office, and I also do a lot of the behind the scenes work, along with my colleague Tanya, who's going to introduce herself. But I'm very excited for this panel. It's cool because I get to see some names that I've actually worked with in prior cycles that are now at medical school. So that's awesome.
Thanks, Emma. Heather, you're up.
All right. My name is Heather Nunes, and I'm one of the new pre-med advisors to the team. Been here since early June. So excited to continue to work with everyone. I'll also be working on some alumni engagement initiatives with current students, so more to come from me soon.
Harris, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Paris. I'm one of the pre-med advisors. I've been with the office since April and glad to be here.
Thank you. And I don't think I introduced myself. I'm Krista Rogers. I'm another advisor in the Office of Pre-Professional Advising. Dr. Sanford, you're up.
Just want to say hi to everybody. Great to see you again. Hope things are going well with your programs that you're in, or you're taking those last few moments of respite before you get started. Thanks for joining.
Sorry, skipped ahead by accident. Tanya, please.
Thanks for giving me two photos, Krista. Hi, everybody. I'm Tanya. I'm an administrative assistant, so this is my second summer working in the office. I do a lot of emails with Emma, and I also run the social media, or I guess just Instagram. So, yeah, feel free to give it a follow.
So if you've noticed, our social media has pretty much been on fire recently. That is largely thanks to Tanya. And Tanya, do you want to say what you're doing in the fall?
Yes, I'll be going to nursing school at Johns Hopkins in the fall.
Thank you. And I do just want to give a special shout out to Dr. Caroline McGuire, who is Executive Director of Enrichment Programs, the Director of Office of Undergraduate Research, because she's really been an instrumental support throughout the whole process this year. All right, and so now I'm very excited to introduce our alumni. This will just be a quick intro, guys, so please just say your name, any of your affiliations, and maybe something you're doing this summer, and then we'll do a little more comprehensive, UConn involvement and that stuff afterwards. All right, so I have you down by alphabetical order by last name. So Miriam, please.
Hi guys, I'm Mariam. Excited to be here. I'm going into NYIT class of 2025 this August. So for this summer, I've just been trying to relax, get out and hike and stuff. I also have a master's degree in medical humanities, and I was class of 2019 in UConn.
Hi, I'm Suleiman. I graduated from UConn in 2019, had a degree in structural biology and biophysics. I recently ended my 2-year affiliation at the Jackson Laboratory as a research assistant, and I'm starting an MD PhD program at Yale pretty soon, so in August.
Hi everyone, my name's Mark Leeson. I graduated in 2012 with a degree in math and physics. I just saw the picture of Killian. I have a son, Killian. He's 15 and loves blueberry pie, and his doggo Huey. And so I also did a master's in biomedical science, and that's how I developed my interest in medicine. I graduated from the UConn postdoc program in 2019, and I've also have 5 years of biomedical engineering under my belt in interventional cardiology and spinal surgery. I'm also going to UConn and class of 2025, sorry.
Hi everyone, I'm Nasli. I graduated from UConn in 2019, and now I'm at Nova Southeastern University College of Osteopathic Medicine. I'm on my 3rd year now currently, so I've been on rotations all summer. I'm currently on my pediatric emergency medicine rotation, and it's been great. And I also graduated with a degree in MCB.
Hello everybody. I'm Kevin O'Keefo. I graduated from UConn with a degree in biology in 2020. During my gap year, I've been working up until recently as a scribe at UConn Health with the orthopedic and dermatology departments. During the summer, I've mostly been relaxing. I actually just got back from a trip to Colorado where I got to do a lot of cool hiking. So that was exciting. In about 3 weeks, I'll be starting at Yale School of Medicine. So.
Kevin, if you're confused about these pictures, it's thanks to your friend in the office. Okay, and as I mentioned, unfortunately, Kiara did have to cancel about an hour ago. However, I will drop her email in the chat in a bit for any dental people who are tuning in, and we will also have Michael, another dental rep, at the evening session tonight. Okay, and so with that, let's begin with our warm-up questions. I'm actually going to ask our panelists to combine numbers 1 and 2. Before we get started, though, I do want to mention this is being recorded. The slides, the recording will be available on our website afterwards. Audience, you are welcome to drop your questions in the Q&A box. Please make sure it's the Q&A, not the chat, just because that way we can make sure we all see it. And some of our office staff will also be monitoring this. And we would also love it if any audience members want to, show their video and actually ask questions out loud a bit later in this segment. But let's begin with some of our standard questions just to get everyone into the groove of things. So first of all, please share a bit about your pre-medical journey and most meaningful experiences at UConn. Just basically, how were you involved at UConn? Our panelists here come from very diverse backgrounds, but UConn is the one thing that really connects all of them at some point in their pre-medical, pre-dental journeys. And then also talk a little bit about what your interviewing experience was like as a whole, please. Lastly, I don't want to start an inter-alumni war. However, if you don't mind sharing your favorite dairy bar flavor, that would also be appreciated. So I think I'm just going to ask for volunteers to kick us off, and maybe you can jump in popcorn style. Would anyone like to begin?
Sure, Chris, I can start.
Thanks, Mark.
Like I said, my name is Mark. I'm Irish. I moved over to the US in 2018. I graduated in 2012 in math and physics, and wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Didn't really have a direction, so I ended up traveling for a couple of years. And during that time, I was working in kind of unskilled labor, building sites kind of thing, and agricultural work. And I started to develop a want to contribute more to society and maybe use my academics more than I was. And so I tried to find a way to synergize that. I didn't want to completely abandon math and physics, but it definitely wasn't the area I wanted to be in. So I started looking at biomedical engineering. So I went online. I was looking at colleges back in Ireland. I was in Australia at the time, and I found a biomedical engineering program in Galway. But one of their requirements is you had to have a undergrad in biomedical engineering, and it was actually the last year that was a stipulation. They ended up getting rid of it. I didn't know, but I ended up doing a master's in biomedical science instead, which exposed me to some of the medical students, the medical classes that the medical students were being exposed to. So that really was the first time I had any exposure to medicine at all. So I flew back and I did the master's in biomedical science. But for my thesis, I managed to get involved with Boston Scientific and was allowed to create my own research thesis that had to be supervised by the biomedical engineering department. So in the end, I got into where I wanted to go, and from there I went into Boston Scientific. I was hired after my master's thesis, and I was an R&D engineer in their interventional cardiology branch, working on heart valves. And that for me was I was really happy there. It was synergizing of my mechanical background and my biological background, and it was for the benefit of others, and I was making a difference. I was helping create treatments that didn't previously exist for patients. And so that felt really good. And I was challenged with work. I was getting to travel and see the world and go to cases and everything. And I was really happy. And then I ended up going to cases to offer engineering support for some of our pilot launches of our devices. And that's when I was exposed to surgery and to physicians for the first time. And that's when the thought I had was, I have no idea what this person has gone through up to this point. This is an extremely high risk surgery. I don't know what the meeting with the physician was like, what kind of worries they had, and if they're trying to make milestones, or why are they taking on this risk. And so that's when I really began to think about a role as a physician, that they're not just the people who help put new things in your body and help you make you better and get you out the door. They have a huge involvement in preparing you to undertake this, and then to care for you after and make sure that you heal in the best possible way. So for me, I was helping to create the treatment, but I wasn't helping the patient heal. And for me, that was what I really wanted to do, and I didn't realize at the time. So that's when the wheels started turning for me in medicine, and that would have been around 2015, 16. So at the time I was still in Ireland, and my wife, who's from the US, she was there too, and she was finishing up her PhD. So I decided to give engineering a fair chance, because I didn't want to leave it and take on medicine. It's a huge commitment, and it's usually not one you come back from. You kind of stay down that path. So I ended up staying with engineering for a couple of years, learning all I could. And then we moved to the US when my wife finished her PhD. And that's when I decided, okay, medicine is now or never. And it's 2 years after the realization, I still really wanted to pursue it. So that's when I looked online and I found the UConn postbac course, and I reached out to Dr. Stanford to see if it's a possibility as, you know, an international to take on, to be part of this course or to apply. And luckily the visa, I was allowed, and I interviewed and I was successful. And that just made me realize that medicine was for me even more. You know, especially the patient and the healer classes, which I'm sure a lot of you have done, and going out to Farmington and really getting a feel of what it's going to be like to be a physician. So I got married in the middle of my finals week at UConn, and I took a year off because my son was born, and so I wanted to create a financial nest egg before we, you know, go down to one salary for a year. And so I went back to engineering. There was other areas I was interested in, and I just really wanted to make sure that it was the right move for me and my family. And so I was an engineer for a spinal company for almost 2 years as an R&D engineer as well. And again, got huge exposure to surgeries. I was on the bleeding edge of the designs and got a lot of heavy involvement. And so, you know, it was a great engineering job, but still, it couldn't sway me from medicine. So my road to medicine is quite long, but I wasn't deterred on the way, and definitely realized, you know, this is the right move for me. Okay, so sorry, so that was part one. So what was your interviewing experience like as a whole, or my most meaningful experience at UConn? Okay, so there was a couple. So one was I had no chemistry background at all. So for me, chemistry was a totally new subject, more or less. And I had taken, in order to get through the program in a year, I had to take on general chemistry and organic chemistry concurrently. And so that was a big challenge, and maybe a taste of what med school is going to be like a lot of information coming at you very fast that you have to kind of get to grips with. But if I had to pick one moment, I would say it was with the patient and the healer class. We went out to Farmington, and we got to do a mock. We got to do a mock cardiac arrest on one of their dolls, and I have her name. It was Dr. Falacardi, I think is her name. And so she went through the CPR with us, how to diagnose it, what to do, what not to do. And we all did the CPR on the patient, and we all watched each other, critiqued each other, and got to go again. As it turns out, last summer, one of our neighbors was out jogging, and he dropped dead of a heart attack right in front of our house. And so I heard a neighbor scream, and I ran out and saw this guy lying on the ground, almost blue. And so I called an ambulance, and we immediately started CPR. And he had, I think it was a 99% blockage of his LAD artery. So almost total occlusion, but we managed to save him. And I remember the surgeon calling us saying, like, what did you do? Like, how did you get blood to go through? And it was the only time I ever learned CPR was at that night out in Farmington. And so for me, that was the biggest, most meaningful experience for me at UConn. So what was your interview experience like as a whole? So I found the interviews were extremely casual. Now I interviewed in schools in Connecticut because I have to stay close to my parents-in-law because we need help with Killian, my son, while we go through this journey. So they were very, very casual, which was nice. And they were quite similar too, which was really, really good, which is good. So some of the basic interview questions were, well, one, tell me a bit about yourself. So I have kind of an unusual, atypical background. So for me, you know, I'm 31, so I've done a lot of things prior to the interview. So it gave me a lot of material to talk about, which I feel was an advantage to me because, you know, it leaves very limited time to get to the kind of harder questions that may have arisen. The other ones were, why medicine? And I think everyone has a really meaningful reason, otherwise you wouldn't be taking on such a huge undertaking. And committing your life to this journey. So the other one was why this school, why UConn or why Quinnipiac or whatever. And so after that, that was really much the time up. And, I had a couple of questions for them to find out more about the school or things they would change. And so if I had any advice on those, obviously have questions ready, but questions you're generally interested in. I would say my questions for the faculty members, both interviews had faculty members and current students. Obviously, there's questions that would be more suited to faculty members, and there's questions that would be more suited to the students. So I wouldn't necessarily ask them the same questions because I don't think students would have much insight into where the program is going in 10 years. But I think the students may have a better insight on what life is like, going through the program. So I had different questions for each, and I really got to find out a lot more about the school. But overall, interview was extremely relaxed, very pleasant, nice, and I got no curveballs, which was nice.
Thank you so much, Mark. And actually, some of those questions line up very nicely with examples that Lisa gave in our morning presentation. So thank you. All right, next one up.
I can hop in here. So once again, I'm Kevin, and so a little bit about my pre-med journey. I was a traditional pre-med student, and I went into UConn freshman year knowing that I wanted to be a doctor, but I had like a lot to learn about being a doctor and like a lot of experiences to gain. So some of the most meaningful experiences came from being involved with Rose Scholars Health Program, special program in medicine, and I was a member and then president of Honors for Diversity. So those were pretty significant experiences for me. I got to attend Yale Global Health Conference, did a health disparities research program with the HCOP office at UConn Health. I got to attend an urban service track at UConn. I was involved in research with Dr. Salomon's lab in the psych department. And I did a research program over the summer at Stanford during the summer of 2019. That's also when I took my MCAT. So I did all of these things, and I was gonna apply straight through. So after my junior year that summer when I took my MCAT and I was doing the research program, but then I got really stressed out and I didn't really feel like the moment was right to apply, and I felt like I still had weaknesses in my application that I could work on. So at that moment, I decided to take a gap year to relax, refocus, and focus on my weaknesses. I felt that my biggest weakness on my application was clinical hours. I had done some shadowing in the Health Disparities Clinical Summer Research Fellowship Program that I did the summer after my freshman year, but I felt like I could have a lot more hours and a lot more experience to really understand what it was to be a doctor. And I felt really strongly about that weak point on my application, not only because it was like a certain amount of hours that you need to achieve, but I also was like, I really need to understand what I'm getting myself into and like what I want to go into. So I felt like that was something that was really important that I couldn't ignore. So during my gap year, I was a scribe to specifically gain those hours and like immerse myself in that experience. And I did that for a couple months, which I felt like was really, really helpful to my application. And it really helped me to understand that the application definitely doesn't end until the end of the interview. So I'd recommend focusing on any weak points that you can focus on up to your interview during your gap year, during your senior year, so that like, yeah, if you can, I'd recommend it. As for my interview experience, my interviews were nerve-wracking, but also exciting. Knowing everything was a part of the interview was pretty difficult on Zoom because it's hard to be on Zoom for hours at a time. But it kind of helped knowing that everyone was in the same boat, and they really, at the beginning of each interview, they expressed that if you had any connectivity issues, that wouldn't be held against you, which obviously it shouldn't be. So that helped to calm me down a little bit. Everyone was in the same situation, there was a little bit of imposter syndrome because obviously medical school is really competitive. So when you get to the interview and all these applicants are here and they all have different paths and journeys to where they're getting to, and you're hearing about a little bit about their hobbies and a bit about what they've done in like the common sessions. So it can be a little bit intimidating, but I was able to relax a bit because the interviewers one-on-one were kind and expressed genuine interest. You could really tell like how deeply they read through your application and they were pulling up specific things about you, and it, it was a really cool feeling. And a piece of advice that my sister, who's now in medical school, gave me was that when you're called for an interview, they've already expressed an interest in you. So you can feel confident knowing that they have some sort of interest in you, and all you need to do is show up, be present, be authentic, be yourself, and that's really all you can do during the interview. So I was super nervous to be talking to students and staff, but during the one-on-ones, but I was excited to be able to show my personality and passion for the things I put on my application, and it ended up being a really cool experience. Um, so with Yale, and both Yale and UConn had pass-fail options, which I was interested in, and they had a particular focus on the health of populations, which I also was interested in, and that was reflected well on my application. So that helped me to be able to answer the questions like why this school, because I was really applying and interviewing with schools whose cultures that I felt like I was a good fit with. Genuinely felt like I was good fit with. So um, that helped to make it easier, but yeah, that's a little bit of a splurge.
Kevin, thank you so much for your candid remarks, especially the points about being authentic to yourself, and then the importance of also applying when you're ready. And actually, everyone nationally, the data shows that more applicants these days do take that extra time and take a growth year, and just build those experiences and make sure that they're really committed to this. So thank you.
I can hop into, like I said, my name's Nosley. I graduated in 2019 and I'm now at Nova Southeastern University in Florida. This is an osteopathic school. Unlike Kevin, I didn't take a growth year. After I graduated UConn, I just came straight to medical school, although it is becoming way more common to take a gap year, and people do truly incredible things throughout their time. I would even say that when I was on the interview trail, I would say at least 50% of the interviewees who I talked to were in one of their gap years. So it definitely is very common. And like I said, people can do such incredible things with their time. For me, my most meaningful experiences at UConn, I was heavily involved in research. So throughout my time, I was at UConn Health for 3 years. I was in the neurobiology department there doing research with Dr. Oliver. And it taught me so much about how to not only conduct a research project, but it was such a great talking point during interviews and sharing your experience and what you learned. And it's also such a great experience learning how to work on a poster and present your findings professionally and even take part in publications. So that was really great. I was also part of the URAP program at UConn. So I think it was a group of about 30 students, and we conducted clinical research at Connecticut Children's Medical Center. And I think I did that for about a year. And for me, when I was at UConn, I knew that I was kind of interested in pediatrics, so I was really drawn towards that course, just to have the ability to work with children and be involved in the clinical setting and work on research. So that was really great. And just for fun, I was part of the Iranian Student Association all 4 years. And that was just great to connect with other students who are part of my culture, and later on held some leadership positions. So that was also great working with them too. In terms of the interview, most of the interviews that I was on was really just one-on-one, just one faculty, maybe two, and then yourself. Usually it would all start out the same, tell me a little bit about yourself, and then they would get into specific questions about their school. And I, as an osteopathic student, they did ask me specifically, why do you want to go to an osteopathic school? What do you know about the profession? And these are all things that you have to learn about before you go into the interview. So there's something called the 5 pillars of osteopathic medicine. So you just have to like read up on that and make sure you really understand the osteopathic profession and why you want to go DO. I also had one interview style at another school where it was actually almost like a group interview. So there were 30 students in one room and two faculty, and it was very casual. They just wanted to have an open discussion with people. And of course, they would take note on what you say and like who says what. So in that way, you did have to stay on your feet and make sure you were participating and give meaningful responses. But they did, like Kevin said, it's really just important to be yourself, be authentic, and know as much as you can about the school that you're interviewing at.
I'll go after Nazli. Hi guys, I'm Mariam. I'm also going into osteopathic medical school, class of UConn 2019. So while at UConn, I wanted to make sure I did a lot of like extracurriculars that were not medical related. When I was in high school, I was involved with gun violence prevention activism and things like that. So I was involved with refugee and immigrant support. I was the president of the Alzheimer's Association. So I really tried to get like hands deep into like social activism type of things. As far as meaningful experiences, I was also part of the URAP program that Nosley was in. I did that for 3 years. So the first year we went and we did recruited people for research projects, things like that. And then the next 2 years, I was actually a student leader in a specific project. So I was able to do a small offshoot project of the main project. I was able to present at 2 different pediatric conferences, really do a poster presentation, do an actual presentation. So that really helped me understand, the research aspect and how that can connect with medicine. I also really wanted to go into pediatrics, so that was really helpful. And then I was a reapplicant, so I had applied the summer after my junior year. And probably by like January, I realized that I wasn't getting any interviews and I needed to kind of build my resume. And so I started applying to master's programs. So 1 year, 2 year master's programs, things like that. So I eventually decided to go to the University of Rochester School of Medicine. And I did a 1 year master's degree in medical humanities, kind of going along the lines of mixing my interest in social justice activism and then my interest in medicine. And through there, I was able to do research. It was translational research, so I worked a lot with the deaf community in Rochester. I did poster presentations again, things like that. And that really pushed me to go and apply for osteopathic programs. So I applied again after graduating. And during this past year, I worked as a medical assistant. And yeah, and so as far as interviewing experiences, so I applied during the Zoom cycle. So a lot of it was online, unfortunately not in person through my bedroom. I was surprised because as all of the other panelists said, they really want to know about you instead of, what you did in the past, what your grades are, things like that. So you really want to make sure that you're going in and you understand why medicine, if you're doing osteopathic, why osteopathic medicine, who you are as a person outside of your schools and outside of your classes. I did kickboxing for a very long time since I was 4 years old. So a lot of my questions were really focused on that because I wrote my personal statement about that, which was very shocking. But they really want to get to know who you are as a person. So yeah, that was kind of my experience. I just also want to emphasize that, like, if you go in and you apply and you don't get it, it's not because of you. It's just that you need to take a look at who you are and where your weaknesses lie and just try again. So there is no failure per se. You're just kind of pushing it off until the next year.
Thank you. I just want to jump into Nosley participated in a Chat with Alumni series with her sister actually earlier this year, which we did share in our morning presentation with some really great tips about especially learning the 4 core tenets of osteopathic medicine. So please check that out. And then one of the reasons I was so excited for Mariam to join was because this cycle we have worked with a lot of applicants who are very interested in working with immigrant and refugee populations. And so thank you for sharing your experiences with that. All right, I think we got one more.
Hello, I'm Suli. My name's Suli. Most people call me Suli. So I guess when I entered UConn in, I guess it's now 2015, I thought I would be an economics major. I was like very into, I guess, finance and stuff in high school. I thought I did well in those classes. But I took a one credit elective on a whim, and it was focused on pharmaceutics and biotechnology. And I think the unique part about this course was they had, professors and people who I guess, ran companies come in and talk about the technology and advancements and broadly just research and how it applied to, what they were creating. And I was really fascinated by it, and I would say that's probably the thing that got me first interested in research. The attraction to me was, you sort of see these products that you in the store, kind of like how Mark was talking about, but you don't really see the work that goes behind creating them and the research that goes behind creating them. At the end of the day, you know that they affect people, and you see that in some one way or another, that I guess it benefits people as a whole. And I was really fascinated by that idea. And so I got into research in a lab in the School of Pharmacy. And I did work with lipid nanoparticles and polymer microspheres. And I guess that's where my love for research sort of started. Again, I was really interested in being able to create something or being able to research something that at the end of the day was being used to help people. And the advancements in that sort of arena is what really got me interested in research, and I kind of pursued those routes using the opportunities available for summer students and things like that. I was at the Jackson Laboratory for one summer, and along those lines, when I was in research, I was kind of also interested in I guess connecting with the people whose the research I was trying to accomplish was trying to help. So I sort of entered, these various volunteering experiences in which I was learning more about the patient experience and how the research I was conducting sort of either, influenced or helped their overall condition and their, I guess, standard of life. And I had various volunteering experiences. I think the most significant was at the Hole in the Wall Gang Camp. So I volunteered there for numerous sessions. And if you don't know, the Hole in the Wall Gang Camp is a camp for seriously ill kids and their families, where they can go and basically enjoy a recreational experience. And you, as a volunteer, typically you're there to cater to whatever they need to show them around the camp, interact with the kids. If they say dance, you dance. If they say jump, you jump. And you spend time with, I guess, playing with them. And I guess in one way you're trying to have fun with them, but the other part of it is you're learning about how their illness has affected them and how it's affected their families. That for me was really influential. It kind of, I guess when you're in research, it's kind of hard to understand when you're at the bench, why you're doing what you're doing and what the end goal is. And seeing, having those types of experience, I think adds some magnitude to the work that you do. At least it did for me. And that's sort of when I decided to pursue the MD PhD route. I knew that I loved interacting with people. I loved interacting with patients, and I knew that I also loved research. And I wanted to, I guess, have the biggest impact that I possibly could. And I saw that in the formal, training as an MD PhD. And I'd say that the interview experience for this. Actually, let me preface. So after graduation, I worked at the Jackson Laboratory. So I'd been there for a summer, and then I began there again. And I worked there for 2 years. And I took my gap years for a couple of reasons. One was I had a really good summer research experience at Jack. So if you'd like to talk about that, I could talk about that as well. And I worked in the single cell biology lab there for 2 years, and I recently ended my position there to begin medical school. I did research in a couple of different things. So one was establishing a 3D organoid screening method. So I worked a lot with organoids of various tissue types. We focused on cancer, again, multiple tissues, but the entire idea was to develop this automated screening platform. And then I worked with endometriosis as well. And the idea behind that was to use single cell transcriptomics to find biomarkers and potential treatment avenues for it. I would say that, when applying, my interview experience as a whole was kind of stressful. I mean, obviously, I think it's expected to be a little bit. I would say that overall, it was, despite being stressful, I think it was positive. I think all of my interviews were very good. With the MD PhD interviews, some of them can be 2 days long when you're interviewing with as many as 10 faculty, and some of them are probing questions about, why you want to be a doctor, and others are concerned more about your research, and others are kind of a mix of the two, saying asking why do you need both to do what you want to do. I think again, it was positive. I think it was positive because I sort of had an idea of how the research I wanted to do would impact, I guess, the field of research that I want to enter. So even though those things are sort of uncertain for me because I'm not sure exactly what I want to do, I had an idea about how the research I had conducted in the past sort of played into a bigger picture. And I, was very, I emphasized the fact that I wanted to, at the end of the day, whether that be an academic position or, position in some sort of company, what I wanted to do was have an impact on either treatment avenues or individuals, patients, and expressing that, it was, I think, important to have an understanding of the research that I'd done previously. So I would say that overall it was, very, very positive, as long as you know what the research you've conducted is and how it plays into a bigger picture. And yeah, I mean, I would say that overall was very, very positive, except for maybe one interview, which was kind of bizarre, but other than that, it was good. So I guess the important thing about that is even if you, while you're interviewing, have an interview that doesn't go well, don't sweat it.
Thank you. I saw much nodding from our other panelists a lot as well. And a 2-day interview, 10 faculty members. Oh my goodness. So now I'm going to ask you to please go in the same order and please respond to questions 3 and 4. So number 3, just briefly sharing an example of a question that you really enjoyed answering. And then also maybe an example of a question that was really difficult to answer or just was completely unexpected. And then finally, just some basic tips for our current cycle applicants. In addition, feel free to follow up with anything that you've thought of since answering the first couple questions. So Mark, please.
All right. So for me, I think the question I most enjoyed answering, and this was asked in both questions, it's a pretty typical one, is why medicine? And the reason I enjoyed answering it was because for me, medicine, this whole idea of pursuing medicine has been going on for years, and it transcended through a few milestones in my life and still maintained on top. So it allowed me to showcase that, I really mean this. I've really thought about this, and I'm still just as hungry for it now as I was 5 years ago. And because it incorporated or transcended across a lot of my life experiences, it gave me a great opportunity to incorporate a lot of my traits or core competencies that they're looking for. Resilience in terms of hard times. If I was, major events that happened traveling, it allowed me to showcase my hunger for it, my knowledge, and just a whole and multiple aspects of my life and who I am as a person. So that was my favorite question to answer, and I find that because I'm a somewhat atypical applicant, it helped me stand out more. And so I guess those are the 2 reasons. One, because it incorporated a lot of my core traits, and 2, it separated me. And so they always seem to be very interested in my background leading up to medicine, especially even just the fact that I'm not from the US, that I'm from Ireland, and they're interested in what it's like and how the schools are different. And so to be able to offer some insight into anything that you talk about that your interviewers didn't necessarily know is always a good thing. So that for me was my favorite question. And what was a difficult or unexpected question? So I found the only question that was different was I got asked about what do I think is the biggest problem physicians face today. And so for me, I said bureaucracy. And this is because I was chatting at PM and our physician, and he was always swamped with paperwork, and his patients were always being whipped out of his ward because their insurance was up. It was only 2 weeks, or they had to really advocate that another week of treatment would be necessary. And he found that his hands were always tied. Like, he knew he could help them. He knew his wing could get them back to where they would be in a good place in life. And he was constantly battling insurance companies and paperwork and hospital regulations. And so, she then asked, a sort of a situational question, like, what would you do if, you had a patient that you knew you could help, but you couldn't? And I don't know. And that's what I said. I don't know what I would do, because, that's a really deep question. I mean, it depends on, what your responsibilities are in life. If you have a family to feed, you don't want to go, total maverick and lose your job and lose your license and no longer be able to provide for your family. But everyone has different morals and values, and what they're willing to do. And so it really depends on the situation and you as a person, and your experience. And I found that being honest and just thinking it through and out loud and showing a bit of depth of thought, she was really pleased or impressed with the answer, and said that, wow, you're a really deep thinker, and I really appreciate you being honest. So I would always definitely be honest. I think, talking things through, but I wouldn't make something up or lie. It's okay to not know things, but at least, say why you don't know. And then, how would I recommend current applicants best prepare for interviews? So know your primaries and your secondaries off by heart, because that's what they have, and more or less, and that's what they're going to go through. And to know them off by heart, and your personal statement, I mean, that's why medicine, right? You're definitely going to get asked why medicine. And so that's basically going to be an answer. You're going to elaborate that, bring in things that you couldn't necessarily fit into the 1,000 characters or however much they gave you. Always be thinking about the traits and the competencies that you want them to know about you. And this is, an opportunity. You already have this question prepared. It's your personal statement. So know that off by heart. What's going to separate you from other applicants are the unique experiences and stories you have in your primaries. So know those inside out. That's what they're going to be reading from. That's what they're going to ask you to elaborate on. And so you want to know, ways you can work in answers and experiences and anecdotes that showcase who you are, that you couldn't necessarily fit in those tiny little answer boxes. So know your primaries and secondaries. And so for me, I'll just look quickly. My questions were, read primaries and secondaries. Obviously, do your research on the school. They're going to ask you why, this school is a good fit for you. So for me, I'm a husband, I'm a father. I need a school that's supportive for me and my family. I mean, I have a lot going on in life outside of med school, and I need to make sure that this school is a good fit to allow me to be a father too, because that's obviously extremely important to me. If I had to pick two, I would obviously be a father if medicine wasn't a possibility. So I would do your research and find out why this school is a good fit for you. And so I was interested about the curriculum. I was interested about, child support, or what happens if, if there's a catastrophe and things go wrong, like how can the school offer support? So I would research, why is the school a good fit for you? So really get to know about it. I would think about the qualities that I would want to showcase. Humility, resilience, emotional maturity, integrity, your scientific competency, your creativity, communication, sensitivity, compassion, all those kind of things. I thought about my, what makes me unique as an applicant. So how can I really separate myself from the crowd? And so I tried to really think back over all the years of the different things that I did that offer transferable skills and insights that will help me be a better doctor. Also thought about my strengths and weaknesses. I think this can really be an opportunity to show your competency, but also that humility, that you're aware of your weaknesses and how you plan to address them. And if they ask you, why should we accept you? So this for me is like, if you're interviewing for the school, the program is a good fit for you, but why are you a good fit for the program? Like what can you bring to improve the other students' experiences at that school? So for me, it was, I was an engineer for 5 years for 2 firms, worked across the world on totally different sections. And so to have that research and development experience, bringing something from benchtop to bedside, everything in between, working with all the different agencies and companies involved, that's something that I could bring to the table and let people know what it's like to develop new treatment options and to pioneer next generation technology if that's something they wish to pursue. And obviously where, you don't want to go in and say, I want to be an orthopedic surgeon. Like that's what I want to do. You want to maintain an open mind. So for me, like I said, there was a lot of things that I thought I wanted to pursue, and thought a lot of things that I thought I wanted to do and be. So when I was traveling, I thought that was it for me. I was going to live in Australia forever. And then when I came back to Ireland, I was like, okay, I'm going to live in Ireland forever. And none of those things happened. Like my values and opportunities always change. So I would always keep an open mind. You can always express an interest as to why and how you're going to synergize your background into a particular field and how you feel like you can make an impact or a difference with that. So I always think it's good to have an idea of what you want to be, but also say that, be aware that things might change once you do rotations or meet certain people or get certain opportunities. And lastly, your faculty questions. Well, lastly for me, it was faculty questions. So really think about what you want to know about the school. Like, so for me, it was current students who are married and have kids. Like that's really important for me to know because I want to know how they do it. How do they maintain being a supportive husband and a father and also doing, going through school. So that was important for me to know. If there was anything about so again, I was in the COVID cycle. So is there anything that the school adapted to that they might now incorporate into their program long term? Like, is the program going to be different to what I've read online over the last 10 years? And then if there is anything the faculty see, if there's anything about the program that they don't necessarily like or they would like to change or they could see improve, I think that, that makes them think about it. Like a nicer way, I would say something that if you say like, what's the worst thing about, say, Quinnipiac? I wouldn't say it like that, but it really puts them on, makes them think about the program and say, well, there's this, this, and this. But I think, I would like to see this happen. And it makes them think about the program and force them into an honest answer, which is good. And then, for the current students, typically what's the workload like? What do you like to do for stress relievers? So they're going to want to get you to know you as an applicant, but you want to show that you're social and you fit the program and that you can sit down and connect on another level outside of medicine, because everybody has lives outside of medicine. And so I think you really want to showcase that, and make those connections and show that you've got, all your different hobbies and passions that you like to do. And it really gives you, really rounds you off more as a person, because everybody's interested in medicine. Everybody's talking about medicine and why. But I would really try and talk about the interesting parts of your life outside of medicine that makes you a unique person, not just as a medical applicant, but as a person in general. So I think that would be my 2 cents.
All right, I think I'm next. Um, so an example of a question that I enjoyed answering, was the question sort of about like, tell me about yourself at the beginning of the interview, because it helped to take the pressure off and it helped to like sort of personalize myself outside of medicine, as Mark was just saying. So I could talk about music and my love for listening and dancing to it and making it. So it helped to calm me down during the interview, because it helped to drive home how interested they were in me as an applicant and the person. A hard question that I had was, um, that's for a specific example of a team and like a conflict and how it was resolved, how I went about resolving it. So this was hard for me because I was really focused on like the big ones that I knew I was going to get asked, like why medicine, why this school, strengths and weaknesses, stuff like that. So I didn't focus as much on like regular job like questions, but that can definitely still come up, and it's good to reflect on a few experiences, a few organizations maybe you've been involved in or volunteering that you've been involved in, and think of specific examples of situations that you could use for job-like questions. An unexpected question, I don't forgot the question actually, but I ended up talking about being a bank teller for a bit. I was a seasonal bank teller, like sort of in high school and the summer after my freshman year of college. And I didn't expect to talk about it, but it came up, and it was cool to be able to talk about how it related to medicine because I wasn't really expecting that. But like financial well-being is similar in the fact that it's a vulnerable aspect of people's lives that affects them pretty greatly, and the privacy is also protected by the law in like just different ways. So that's sort of how I connected it. Um, for for advice that I would have on preparing for the interviews, I would recommend writing out in a document talking points to basic questions that you know you're going to be asked, like why medicine. So to help me come up with talking points, I looked at the UConn pre-med portal. I reflected on the interview I had with Dr. Sanford, my personal statement, my primaries and secondaries. So I took all of these written responses and I sort of came up with a chronological narrative because that's how I think, and that's what helps me keep track of and like how I'm going to answer it. So I wrote that down and like sort of like didn't really rehearse the talking points, but like sort of like ran through the talking points and try to look at the questions on my document, but not look at my responses so I can keep on recalling sort of basic talking points that I could then like go off of naturally in a conversation like manner. So for like why this school, I would recommend like once again when you're making your talking points, I'd recommend researching the school, having a clear concept of the culture of the school, and then reflecting on why you fit with the school and um, their their culture. I found it helpful to reference specific interactions you may have had with the school. Maybe if you did research at UConn Health, or if you volunteered at a certain school or did a research program at certain school, that could be helpful to like sort of connect into, oh, I had this introduction and exposure to the school, so I know a little bit about the culture, and then build upon it. Because like if you did research, you don't exactly know what it's like to be in a medical school, so you can be like, okay, maybe I've been around this school when I was doing research and learned a little bit of the culture, but I also researched about the culture online, and here's why I think I would fit. I live about 30 minutes away from Yale, and I used to go there to get Shake Shack during high school and insomnia cookies. So I somehow was able to bring that up during an interview. But more connected to medicine, I attended the Global Health Conference multiple times at Yale, and I met a few Yale students and doctors that inspired me there. And that was something that like I never really thought that I would bring up because it was sort of like just a one day thing. But like when I was preparing my talking points, I was like, wait, that kind of was an exposure to this school, and um sort of showed me like where their priorities were, because they were a school that was hosting the global health conference, and if I was interested in global health, which I moderately am, that could be a part of the culture, and that could be a way that I fit in a way that I've been exposed. And then I took that and I built up around the pieces of information that I got from the website. I searched YouTube videos. We have medical influencers now, so on YouTube you can like sometimes find students that go to these schools and like talk about a day in the life and stuff like that. I found those videos helpful because it helps to sort of see if you fit with the school. Um, For the question like strengths and weaknesses, I would recommend preparing that. Explanations for any weaknesses on your applications, but for only if they bring it up. No point in bringing up a weakness if they didn't ask you about it, in my opinion. I would list out key experiences on your application and reflect on them with specific examples that show how do you fit into the school. So I guess an example of that, I had my document actually for my interview zone. I was an organic chemistry TA for 2 years, and UConn does team-based learning. So I sort of like the chemistry TA session sort of worked like team-based because it wasn't a lecture. So the students had to come prepared with information that they have already learned. And then we just did questions in the review session. So I was like, that kind of is sort of similar, sort of along the same lines of team-based learning at UConn. So I was like, that's a really good fit. It shows how I've done stuff on my application that sort of already aligns with the values and the style of the school. And it shows how I would be a good fit because I have an example of how I was a good fit in the past. Um, I would say, and then research your interviewers briefly when you usually get them like the day before or the night before. So you can research them briefly. You don't have to go too into depth, but that will help with coming up with questions. One of my interviewers at Yale was an administrator who didn't have a medical background at all. And I found that out through like just a short Google search and reading a little bit about him in an article. And so I used that to ask him a question. I was like, oh, I noticed you didn't have a background in medicine at all. Like, so how did you end up, like, why are you interested in interviewing or being on the admissions team for a medical school? So I thought that was a good question. I thought he had a good answer. Um, let's see. Yeah, yeah. So
Okay, I think I'm next. I can share an example of an unexpected question that I got, and that was, what are 3 ways that you would like to improve yourself? And I really wasn't expecting this question when I got it. It kind of struck me as random, and especially like when you work so hard to put yourself in the best light, and now like one of the interviewers are asking you ways to improve. But at the end of the day, I later realized that it really comes down to self-reflection and self-improvement. Now, as a third-year student and even as a second year, I realized that self-improvement really is the name of the game. As a second year studying for board exams, you're constantly finding ways to improve your study techniques and the ways that you can answer questions for your exams. And even as a third year now, self-reflection and self-improvement is so critical on your rotations. You know, you're never going to grow as a physician if you don't really take the time to self-reflect and find these little ways to improve yourself. Like, what could I have said in this certain situation to make this patient more comfortable? Or is there something else I could have prescribed to this patient to help their condition? These are so important on every level of medical training, even as a pre-med student, a medical student, residents, attendings, fellows, they all have to really take that time to reflect and grow upon themselves. And I think that this question, while at first seemed kind of random and unexpected, really was the first step in just kind of humbling yourself and making you realize that there's always ways that you can improve in any situation. So that was the unexpected question. For the question that I most enjoyed answering, that was the question, how can you contribute to our school? And I really enjoyed answering this question because it allowed the interviewer a window to see you as part of the school for however long it was. You know, if you want to talk for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it really just gave you that period where the interviewer now envisioned you as part of that program. And I really think that that window is so important. So I would recommend like looking up the clubs that they have and which ones you would be interested in joining. I remember I looked up professors and their research projects to see if there was anything that I could help with. Looking at the different leadership positions that they have, like being a student ambassador or helping to lead the interviewers for next and future cycles. These are all ways that you can showcase to the school that you're knowledgeable about their program and their campus and how you would make a meaningful impact if you were accepted. So that was a question that I really liked answering. For question 4, how would I recommend the current applicants to best prepare for interviews? I think it kind of goes along with the last question, just to really know the school well. Research the clinical rotation sites ahead of time so you can really talk about, how like the different types of hospitals you would be interested in rotating and what kind of specific rotations do they offer. I know at Nova, they're offering pediatric emergency medicine, which I'm in right now. And I remember looking at other programs and they didn't have pediatric emergency medicine. So I was like, wow, like that's something I'm really interested in. And I brought that up and I'm really enjoying it now. So I think it's just a way that you can really show the school that you're doing your research and that you're interested. Other ways, you can look up their curriculum, look at the courses that you're going to be taking, just really show the interviewers that you came prepared and that you want to be there. I think the worst thing that you could do is treat every interview as the same and just give generic answers at each interview. You just really want this to be an opportunity to showcase your knowledge. And like I said, there's multiple ways you can do this. You can use the school website, but I also found it particularly helpful to actually connect with a current student and talk about their experiences on campus. So I would always try to either Facebook someone or go into the group on Facebook and see if you could find anyone who's like a second year or third year or even a first year and just talk to them and see what their life is like and if you can envision yourself at that school. Other tips, never underestimate good interview practice. You don't necessarily want to memorize your answers, but you do want to rehearse, I think, and make sure you're not stuttering or stumbling and that you have a very good flow during your interview. And also at the end of the interview, make sure that you get your interviewers' emails and maybe a couple days after the interview, just send a quick, super short, sweet email, briefly reminding them about the certain unique points that you talked about so they can better remember who you are and just thank them for their time in interviewing you. So those were my tips that I had.
Okay, so one question I really enjoyed answering, which actually was kind of surprising that it came up quite a few times in my application cycle, was what do you think is the biggest problem with medicine? Because they're not really, when they ask you the questions at interviews, they're not really asking for a solid response. They really want to see how you're thinking through it. And you want to make sure, and it was fun kind of commenting on like the problems with medicine, but also playing devil's advocate in your response. So you want to acknowledge like, oh, well, this is the biggest problem. Like say, finances is the biggest problem, but at the same time, there's this and this and this that you have to think about when you're talking about finances and medicine. So that was surprising at first, but by the kind of like the third time I had that question, I was really excited to answer. A unexpected question I had was actually asking about my self-care techniques. I was really preparing for going through my application, talking about who I am as a person, things like that. And then when it was actually the NYIT where my interviewer asked me like, what do you do for self-care? And it took me back a little bit, and I really had to think about like, oh, what do I do for self-care? And I think it's important because they really want to know that you're able to handle all the stress of medical school and of being a doctor. And so that was also fun to answer, but it definitely did take me aback a little bit. And then let's see, to prepare for interviews, I would say, again, just kind of review all aspects of your application. And then also think about how you've grown since your primaries and your secondaries up until your interview. Because during that time, there's probably there might be a couple of weeks, there might be a couple of months between that time, and you really are growing, especially in your late teens, early 20s, you are growing as a person. So you really want to make sure that you're including those aspects of you in your interview. they usually at the end of the interview ask, like, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you want to talk about? And that's your opportunity to be like, oh, in the past month, you can say something like, oh, I really got into hiking, or you can say something like, I'm involved in, this and this that I recently started volunteering. So it kind of shows that you're growing throughout your time applying, and you're not like one stagnant person. The other thing is, I would say take time to kind of reflect on who you are as a person and what you want to do after medical school. A lot of the times during applications, you're really thinking about like, getting into medical school is the end all be all, but it really isn't. You really want to think about what you're going to do with your medical degree afterwards. So for me, I was really interested in community health. So like Chris said, I did a lot of work with like refugee resettlement and refugee support. So I really want to work in underserved populations. So it's important to figure out like what you're going to do once you become a doctor, once you become a physician. Excuse me. And whew, one sec. Yeah, so it's really important to think about, who you're going to be after medical school, not specifically who you are before medical school.
I'm just going to jump in really quickly because I apologize. We miscalculated the amazing insight and examples that all of you are putting into your responses, and it's incredibly helpful. Thank you so much. If any of you are able to stay till 12, we would appreciate that to be able to answer some audience questions. If you need to hop off though, no worries. If you are willing also to leave your email in the chat box, please, that would be lovely. Okay, Suli, please.
Okay, so one question that I really enjoyed answering was about my thesis project in undergrad. So really anything related to research I enjoyed answering, but that one I was very connected to because it was a project that I had proposed. And I enjoyed answering it because it was one of those things where, I understood, the implications that it had, I guess what it was doing in the field. And, I like talking about it. I like, talking it up and talking about the significance, but I also understood its strengths and its weaknesses. And I enjoyed talking about it because I think it's something that I truly learned from. I think it taught me how to be, gritty. It taught me things about researching, initially and throughout like the entire writing experience. I enjoyed it a lot, and so I enjoyed talking about it. During the interview process, there was one question that don't remember exactly, but it was along the lines of what's something that you were forced or expected to learn that you thought was stupid, and like why was it stupid? Basically, that's what it amounted to. And I think when we are in school in undergrad and even master's programs and beyond, we're sort of expected to take everything at face value and to think of it as very important and significant. And this kind of this question threw me off because it kind of turned that on its heels, that ideology. And I think at the end of the day, I think what they were looking for is that I was able to critique the things that I was learning. And so I think that's kind of along the lines of knowing the strengths and weaknesses of things. And so it's I think someone mentioned it earlier, it's important to be able to play devil's advocate for a lot of certain things. And that's, I guess, what I was expected to do. I said something along the lines of, oh, I thought memorizing the amino acids was ridiculous. Not ridiculous, but I said it was kind of why would I have to do that when I can just Google it, et cetera. And I followed up with, well, if you're doing research and someone's presenting and, in your head, all the amino acids and their symbols and whatever, and their properties, it's important to be able to, question the research and et cetera. So along those lines, that's what my answer was. At the time, I didn't think it was a good answer. I spent a lot of time afterwards thinking oh my goodness, why did I say that? But I was accepted at the school afterwards, so I guess it turned out well. I think my current advice would be to know yourself. I think the application process is extremely introspective, and I think I learned a lot about myself along the way. So if you don't have everything figured out, as soon as you apply, it's okay, because some time will pass in which you're writing, your secondaries, and that's, that time will be well spent understanding what, what how you grew up, how it may have affected you, how your classes may have affected you, how your friends may have affected you, and you think about all the things that have influenced you. And I think that's extremely important. The other piece of advice I would have is that whatever you enter after graduating, or whatever, if you take years off to work, etc. It's important to remember that if you're applying to a graduate program, a PhD program, an MD PhD program, an MD program, at the end of the day, they're training programs. So you're not expected to know everything. You're not expected to, have these amazing accomplishments. Of course, you probably will, but you're learning, and I think that it's important to understand that that essentially you express that that you're going to be learning, and that you hope that you will learn a lot, and you should be able to, I guess, express what the training program will give to you that you'll be able to give back.
Thank you so much, everyone. I have a feeling you've actually answered a lot of people's questions already. But at this point, I do invite any of our audience members to speak up and ask any questions, either directly to specific panelists. And then panelists, please feel free to either answer or don't answer. Not everyone has to answer. So do we have anyone who would like to ask a question?
I do have a question for the panelists. I was wondering, so I think I heard that somebody's personal statement was about kickboxing. And I just feel like, yeah, in general, trying to decide what to write your personal statement about must be really difficult, since you all have so much that has gone into your journeys. So I guess, how did you pick what to write about for that?
Yeah, that was mine. Oh my gosh. I would say the personal statement was probably the hardest part of the application because I had like 10 different ideas. And so me personally, I've been doing martial arts since I was like 4 years old. Um, I actually did it because of my sister, so it was really like part of my journey in life. Like it was my one constant throughout my journey. So I ended up writing about kickboxing in the sense that like I always went back to it even through like my medical journey, and like these are the morals it taught me, and this is like when I, do something medical related, I always think back to the morals, and I always think back to like who I am as a person, and that really stuck with like how I grew through kickboxing. Um I would say it is hard to kind of choose your topic, but I would say like don't be afraid to choose something that is like personal to you, even if it's not like the most life altering, like deep changing, like life changing thing. You want to make sure that it reflects who you are as a person, because that's really what they're looking for in their personal statement.
I'm responding to a question in the chat. Anyone else, please speak up. Actually, it looks like we have a couple general questions in the chat. So from Lisa, how did you balance your responses in your interviews? You can read more in the chat box. If anyone would like to respond to that, please.
I'm sorry. I'll have a go at answering this, Krista. So it was how did I moderate my responses, or could you repeat the question?
Sure. How did you balance your responses in your interviews? For example, how did you know if you were answering too many questions with examples from one of your past experiences, or presenting yourself as a real well-rounded candidate by talking about lots of experiences?
So I think the questions in my experience were not really didn't overlap too much. So like I said before, like why medicine, for me that was almost my personal statement. From it started with me finishing up my undergrad and not knowing what I wanted to do, and traveling. So it was my experiences traveling, and eventually seeing all the poverty through my journey over through like 30 countries or whatever it was, you know, I realized that I basically had won the birth lottery. You know, I'm so fortunate to have all these opportunities purely just because of where I was born in the world. And so that really made me want to take advantage of those opportunities and appreciate them. And so that's where the want to contribute to society more in a meaningful way came, and that's why I ended up, you know, looking into doing a master's and going back and getting into biomedical engineering, and why it was a good fit, and then why it turned out that it wasn't necessarily what I was looking for. And then from there, you know, I went on to moving to America and comparing the two countries and the healthcare systems and the disparities and what I think, you know, they could learn from one another, and then eventually on to my experiences as an engineer and how that's going to make me a better doctor, along with all these other things. So I tried not to leave anything out. You know, I mean, the more you talk and the more meaningful things you're saying and the more you're showcasing yourself, that's all good stuff. That's all good points. I wouldn't be worried about, you know, oh, I only answered 3 questions. Like, so long as you're being honest and descriptive and diverse about you, who you are as a person, I wouldn't. That wasn't something that was on my mind. Like moderating, you get asked the question and you go, you just answer, and you're not going to know what they're going to ask next. So I wouldn't say, oh, I'm going to save that in case they ask X, Y, Z. It's like, say it now, say everything chronologically. You know, like Kevin said, it always really helps to tell your story about you as how the story happened. And so, yeah, I wouldn't moderate. I would just get everything down. Once you're given the opportunity to say it, say it.
Thank you. And I apologize because I don't think you can actually see the questions.
No, I can't.
So thank you for being brave, Mark. We did have a question in the chat about how did you select your school list? Any tips for that, anyone?
So I used a resource and then I essentially used that resource to narrow down. So the resource was, I think, provided by the AMC. It's like a list of schools and it sort of lists out all the information that you could ask about them. I think it's the AMCA, I don't know. Someone knows who it is and you know what I'm talking about. If you could put it in the chat, that'd be really helpful. But I used that to assess, like, you know, I guess at the very base level, I could argue that this information is not that important. Basically information about, you know, what the average GPA and MCAT scores of a lot of these schools are, but more importantly, you know, where they're located, sort of the programs they have available, and you could use that information to narrow down. And before that, you may also have, depending on your priorities, you know, where you want to stay. If, you know, location is particularly important to you, you can also use that in conjunction with the resource. So that's how I narrowed it. And then I guess for MD, PhD, it was important that they had, you know, a significant amount of faculty that were doing work that I could find myself, you know, interested in. That was extremely important. And I guess the other part was, you know, if I didn't really apply to any schools that I thought like, oh, I don't want to go there, just as a safety school, at least that was my thought. I really prioritized schools that, again, had faculty that I was very much interested in, had a culture also that fit mine. So I looked at, you know, I tried to find if I had any friends who had either been to that school or knew someone in that school to try to find out about the culture. I think we're fortunate to be surrounded in the Northeast by a lot of schools that are fantastic and that have good cultures. So that was also good. That's how I did it, at least.
To add off of that, I also think that knowing the school's curriculum and whether the curriculum matches your learning style best, if that's a school you can envision yourself in and learning to the best of your capabilities, then I would definitely say put it on your list. But if there's a specific school where maybe their curriculum style is more lecture based, but you want to be more in like small groups, and you don't think that's conducive to your learning, then maybe take that off, because at the end of the day, that type of learning style will be with you for 2 years for your preclinical. So you want to make sure that you can thrive during those 2 years to the best of your ability.
Thank you. And I would like to pose one last question from the chat before we break. So what ways did you find helpful to reassure yourself or be confident in knowing that you're capable of getting into this competitive field? So I think Kevin had brought up the imposter syndrome before. So what ways have you all worked around that if you have experienced that?
I could say sort of during the application. Oh, is my Siri on? During the application process, I believe Celia had said before, it's really introspective. So you think a lot about your application and like where you stand, and you're doing research on the school. So you're gonna feel like, oh, this is competitive. Like, how am I doing this? Because um, as qualified as people are, it's just really competitive, and stars have to align for you to be able to get into these certain places. But I think sort of understanding that the majority of people applying are going to be feeling the same pressure as you. So you belong where you are in the application process, and all you can really do is sort of like relax and put your best foot forward. Um, when you're about to apply, and then when you do your primaries, you kind of just end it. When you get your secondaries, it's sort of like more involved because it's more introspection. The schools are asking you exactly how you would fit with the school. So I'd say it was helpful with my confidence where I was answering these secondary questions and I was pulling from my experience, and I was like, okay, I could see how I fit. I could see how my experiences could make me a competitive applicant. I can see how I could be here. And then when you get an interview, you know that they already have seen something that they like in your application. So it's a little bit easier to convince yourself I'm meant to be here, and then you can just keep on going with the same approaches and introspection and reflection that you've done with your primary application and your secondary application, and just put your best foot forward and and hope for the best.
I think to add on real quick, in the end of the day, like there's only one you. You're gonna find the right school that fits you. And one advice I got that was really helpful is that, the medical schools are interviewing you, but you're also interviewing the medical schools. There are going to be situations where you go into an interview and you're like, I don't fit here at all. So you really are gonna, in the end, find the right school for you, and they're gonna find the right person for them. So it is kind of like a match situation. You're not really, if you think of it more as a match than as like, I need to do my best to get into this specific school, it's gonna feel better.
I'll add one other thing. Kind of like Kevin said, I at times felt like the stars had to align for me to be able to get like a serious look. But there was really no rhyme or reason. It seemed like the schools that extended interviews, I guess they just found things in my application that they liked. Um, and I guess kind of like how it was said previously, it's important to understand what you bring to the school. So understanding that your experiences are like no other student that's applying to that school. So knowing that you're valuable is important, and I guess it's establishing confidence, which is valuable for how you write your secondaries and for how you interview. I mean, at the end of the day, if again, like you may interview at a school and decide that you're not a good fit, so understand that can happen as well. I think that will bring some confidence when you're going through this process.
This has been so fantastic, everyone. We are so thankful for your time and the extra time this morning. I do want to let's stop it right now. I'm sure people are hungry, need to get to meetings. So just everyone heads up, we do have one more alumni panel this evening at 5:30 if you're able to tune into that. But it has been so wonderful hearing about your diverse experiences and really concrete, specific advice and examples. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Yes, seeing some things in the chat box. And just be in touch if anything, if we can do anything for anyone in our office or the Center for Career Development. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.